I wanted to write this article about Dr. Phil's appearance on The View and his interaction with the host when it came to the topic of the pandemic response and how it impacted the mental health of children across this country. And what was interesting about the exchange was how poignant Dr. Phil was and logical about how it impacted children in a negative way by our mismanagement and overreaction to keeping them isolated. But what's also interesting about the exchange was the reaction to the exchange by the audience, which generally speaking is left-leaning. And after he made his final statement, he received a round of applause, an enthusiastic applause.
They were the less vulnerable group, and they suffered and will suffer more from the mismanagement of COVID than they will from the exposure to COVID. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
Well, Phil, we don't even have time to talk it out now, man.
And what that tells me is that the people in the audience and many Americans around this country have seen what exactly he's talking about. And when I wrote this article, I had in mind the impact of lockdowns for my own son. And I saw how he struggled in isolation, how I would have to constantly check on him just to make sure that he was okay. I saw him struggle in school, through the years of having to deal with in-home learning and the disorganization that happened because of it. I saw how he wanted to go back to school, but there was a constant fight between the teachers and the teachers union and when they wanted to go back to school. I saw how my son became more and more reclusive and down and depressed when he's actually a pretty upbeat child. And I saw what many other parents saw, and what many other parents saw was actually worse than what my son was experiencing. Many kids reported, feeling terrible situations, feeling like there is no hope, especially when we tell them that they have to stay inside until further notice, which is like a prison sentence. And I wanted to highlight how isolation for human beings is torture. That's what we do to inmates in jails when they misbehave, because we understand that isolating a human being is the ultimate death. It's the death of the soul for a human being. And loneliness is something that is absolutely horrendous to experience. And I've experienced it firsthand. And watching how society was perfectly fine with experimenting on our kids. And now we're seeing the detrimental outcomes. We're seeing how they're struggling. We're seeing how they're struggling educationally. But even worse, we're seeing how they're struggling with optimism because they saw how the adults failed them. And we wonder what's going to happen afterwards.